The playoffs are here, and you can predict the action all the way to the finals with FanDuel Predicts. Predict the spread, the total points, and even the game-winning moments that make the playoffs. Sign up and get a $25 bonus with FanDuel Predicts.
Offered by FanDuel Prediction Markets, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant. 18-plus bonus is non-withdrawable and expires 7 days after receipt. Trading derivatives involves significant risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Manage your activity with their consumer protection tools. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/predicts/bonus-offer-terms.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
You are now diving headfirst into the Stone Zone. Well, former FBI Director James Comey, once again facing federal indictment over, this time, his threats against President Donald Trump. Comey surrendered to authorities today after the Department of Justice charged Comey with 2 counts related to transmitting a threat in interstate commerce stemming from a 2025 social media post showing the phrase 8647. Now, anybody who understands mob lingo understands that to 86 someone is to kill them. This is not a mystery. Prosecutors argue the message carried a clear and dangerous implication. 86, once again, commonly means to eliminate, paired with 47, a reference to President Donald Trump. I applaud the action here of Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, who stated that threats against any individual, particularly the president, will not be tolerated. Each charge carries a potential 10-year prison sentence. Comey initially dismissed the backlash, claiming he didn't intend violence, but he very quickly deleted the post. But the incident reflects a troubling pattern of rhetoric from high-profile figures who are making threats against President Trump and his supporters and committing acts of stochastic terrorism meant to embolden far-left extremists to go after the president. On a personal level, I kind of wonder, why is it that James Comey was allowed to just peacefully turn himself in today? Why did not 29 heavily armed FBI agents in full SWAT gear, wearing night goggles and brandishing fully automatic M4 assault weapons, surround his home, storm his home, and arrest him at 6 o'clock in the morning, as they did to me? In his previous case, where he was charged specifically with lying under oath to Congress, when he specifically said that he had never given sealed information to any third parties and urged them to leak it to the media in order to embarrass and set up Donald Trump, when there were actual emails that showed that the FBI director, James Comey, did exactly that. He sent classified or sealed information to a law professor who's a friend of his, Dan Richman, and he specifically told Richman to leak that information to the New York Times. Now, in that case, because it was such an open and shut case, 3 federal judges in the Eastern District of Virginia violated both the law and their oath of office and the canon of ethics to destroy the prosecutor in the case, arguing that the case against Comey should be dismissed because Lindsay Halligan, who had been appointed the U.S. attorney in place of Eric Siebert, the previous U.S. attorney, who Donald Trump essentially fired because Siebert never disclosed that his father-in-law, that is his wife's father, was the godfather to James Comey's children and had represented Comey as a personal attorney. In fact, at the time that Siebert was fired as the U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, he had a grand jury operating, was preparing to produce a document recommending that Comey not be indicted, despite the fact that he was stone cold guilty. So this is the second time around for James Comey, but there's a broader question, and it is simply this. While this is a serious crime, and I think the Justice Department was very wise to bring this indictment in North Carolina, where we can actually have a fair trial with an impartial judge and a real balanced and impartial jury, there's a larger problem for Mr. Comey, and that is the seditious conspiracy that begins with the Russian collusion hoax that was born in the White House in 2016, that blossomed as the Russian collusion fraud, where they knew that the Steele dossier, that's the secret report paid for by Hillary Clinton, that alleged that Donald Trump, when a private citizen, had dallied with prostitutes in Moscow, and the claim that the Democrat National Committee had been hacked by Russian intelligence were both not true. They knew that those were lies, but they used them to rationalize the appointment of Robert Mueller, who is now going on to a much higher level of judgment. I suspect he's in a very warm place right now, but also Barack Obama, Joe Biden, John Brennan, the Islamic convert, who was the CIA director, Mr. Comey, who we just spoke about, Susan Rice, Rod Rosenstein, the acting attorney general, and a cast of others, including the most corrupt prosecutor in American history, Andrew Weissman, engaged in a seditious conspiracy. It started with Russian collusion, but then it went from there to the two fake impeachments. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, has now released documents that prove that not only was the Russian collusion matter a hoax, not only were those involved knowingly pushing a false narrative, but the two impeachments were a fraud as well. The Vindman brothers, Colonel Vindman, as he insisted in being called in his fake testimony. One of them is a member of Congress. The other one's running for the Senate in Florida. Good luck with that. And a CIA operative named Eric Ciamella was a so-called whistleblower, when in fact all of them were fabricating their claims. They all claim that they overheard a conversation between President Donald Trump and Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, in which Trump pressured Zelensky to release information regarding Joe Biden. This whole thing was a cover-up. What we were really covering up was the fact that Joe Biden threatened to withhold $1 billion from Zelensky in a U.S. aid if they didn't fire the prosecutor who's investigating his son, Hunter, in the Burisma scandal. So the real question here is, will we have justice and accountability? Will anybody really be held responsible? Now, the New York Times, which used to be a big, important newspaper, but now is essentially the newsletter for the Democrat National Committee, says that Trump is bent on revenge and retaliation. I disagree with that. Those who broke the law, those who violated the Constitution in their manic effort to destroy Donald Trump, to keep him off the ballot in 50 states, to destroy him financially, and indeed to send him to prison, need to be held responsible.
Born on America's darkest day of 9/11, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation has been helping America's heroes ever since. Heroes like FDNY Lieutenant Edward J. McDonough Jr., a Marine Corps veteran and lifelong public servant. After 9/11, McDonough served at Ground Zero. He later lost his life to a related cancer, leaving behind his wife Kimberly and their 5 children. Tunnel to Towers honored his sacrifice by paying off the family's mortgage. Donate $11 monthly and amplify your impact with a car or land donation. Go to T2T.org today.